Smelly old woman. The sergeant's laugh echoed through the diner. His squad joined in, mocking the gray-haired figure hunched over cold coffee. She said nothing, just watched, counted. 12 hours later, that same sergeant lay bleeding in the Texas dirt, screaming into his radio. "Who the hell are you?" Her voice crackled back, calm as death. "I'm the smelly old woman." Then she pulled the trigger. 9 men down in 4 minutes. 800 meters. 1 rifle. 0 mercy. Her name was Margaret Hartwell, the deadliest female sniper in Marine Corps history, and they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. Subscribe now and follow this story to the very end. Comment your city below. Let us see how far her legend travels. The mountains of Afghanistan were unforgiving in February. Wind cut through the rocks like razors carrying ice and the smell of death. Margaret Hartwell pressed her cheek against the cold stock of her rifle, controlling her breathing the way she had for 26 years. In, out, steady. "Winds shifting," Daniel whispered beside her. His voice was calm, measured the voice of a man who had called thousands of shots. 2 clicks left. Elevation steady. Maggie adjusted without looking away from her scope. Her target stood 200 meters below a Taliban commander responsible for 3 ambushes on American convoys. 14 Marines dead, 23 wounded. Tonight justice would find him. "I have the shot," she breathed. "Send it." Her finger squeezed. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through her scope, she watched the bullet travel a journey of nearly 2 seconds across frozen mountain air. The commander dropped. "Target down," Daniel confirmed. "Beautiful shot, Maggie. That's 1 for..." A crack split the air. Different direction. Different caliber. Time slowed. Maggie saw Daniel's eyes widen, saw his body twist toward her, saw his hands reach out, shoving her sideways with every ounce of strength he possessed. The enemy bullet, the one meant for her skull, tore through Daniel's chest instead. "No!" She caught him as he fell. Blood poured between her fingers, hot and impossible to stop. His body shook in her arms. Danny, stay with me." "Maggie." His voice was fading. His eyes, those steady eyes that had guided her through 100 missions, searched for hers in the darkness. "Don't you dare," she hissed. "Don't you dare leave me. We're supposed to grow old together. You promised me, Danny. You promised..." "Listen." His hand found her face, leaving crimson streaks on her cheek. "Promise me something. Anything. Anything, just stay. Don't disappear." He coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. "When I'm gone, don't become a ghost. The world still needs you, Maggie. Promise me. I can't do this without you. Promise me." The strength in his voice, even dying, he could command a room. Even dying, he believed in her more than she believed in herself. "I promise," she whispered. Daniel smiled. That crooked smile she'd fallen in love with 30 years ago at Camp Pendleton, when she was a young private who couldn't hit a target at 200 meters, and he was the instructor who saw something special. "That's my girl," he breathed. "My Maggie, my ghost mother. Go. Make them proud." His hand fell from her face. His eyes went still. And Margaret Hartwell, the deadliest woman in the United States, Marine Corps, held her husband's body in the Afghan mountains and screamed until her voice broke. 8 years later. The Greyhound bus groaned to a stop at a gas station outside Fort Mason, Texas. Dust swirled in the October heat, coating everything in shades of brown and despair. Maggie stepped off the bus, her joints protesting after 18 hours of travel. She looked nothing like the precision warrior she had once been. Her gray hair hung in tangled strands. Her clothes were worn, stained, deliberately chosen to make her invisible. She carried a battered duffel bag that smelled of mothballs and something worse. A woman waiting for another bus wrinkled her nose and stepped away. Good, Maggie thought. Perfect. For 8 years, she had honored Daniel's promise by breaking it. She had disappeared, drifting from town to town, job to job, becoming exactly what she looked like, a homeless woman with nothing left to give. Some days she cleaned motel rooms. Some days she washed dishes. Most days, she simply existed, waiting for the courage to join Daniel wherever he had gone. Then the message came. She pulled out her phone, a burner untraceable, and read the text again. Maggie. Something's wrong at Fort Mason. Female recruits disappearing. 3 in 18 months. Official reports say voluntary withdrawal. I don't believe it. I need your eyes. Please, Sarah. Colonel Sarah Vance, Daniel's oldest friend, the woman who had stood beside Maggie at his funeral while Maggie couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Sarah had never asked for anything in 8 years. Not once. Until now. Maggie looked toward the distant silhouette of Fort Mason, the training installation that had shaped generations of American soldiers. Somewhere inside those walls, young women were being destroyed. And somewhere inside those walls, answers waited. She shouldered her duffel bag and started walking. The diner was called Mama Joe's, and it sat at the edge of town where soldiers came to escape base food and civilians came to feel close to something important. Maggie pushed through the door, ignoring the stares that followed her. She knew what they saw. An old woman who looked homeless, smelled worse, and had no business being among decent people. She chose a booth in the corner, back to the wall. Old habits. A waitress approached young, tired name tag reading Destiny. Her smile was professional, but her eyes held judgment. Can I help you, ma'am? Coffee, black, and whatever's cheapest on the menu. Destiny hesitated. Ma'am, I don't want to be rude, but some of our customers have complained about the smell. The waitress flushed red. Maggie reached into her pocket, pulled out a crumpled $20 bill and placed it on the table. Coffee, black, and whatever's cheapest. Keep the change. Destiny's eyes widened. $20 was probably more than her hourly wage. Her judgment evaporated instantly. Yes, ma'am, coming right up. She hurried away, and Maggie allowed herself a small, sad smile. Money talked. It always did. Even when the person holding it looked like they'd crawled out of a dumpster. She was halfway through her coffee when the door banged open. 6 men in army fatigues strode in like they owned the place, young, arrogant, drunk on their own perceived importance. The leader was tall, broad-shouldered, with sergeant stripes on his sleeve and cruelty in his eyes. Maggie cataloged them automatically. Heights, weights, probable training levels, concealed weapons. The sergeant carried a non-regulation sidearm under his jacket. She spotted the bulge immediately. 2 others had knives in their boots. All 6 wore patches. She didn't recognize a skull with crossed rifles, unofficial, definitely not standard. Something was very wrong with this unit. The sergeant, his name tag read Brennan, spotted her immediately. His face twisted into a sneer of disgust. Boys, he announced loudly. Looks like the town dump is leaking. His squad laughed. The sound was ugly, practiced the laughter of men who had done this before. Brennan strutted toward her booth, his boots heavy on the linoleum floor. He stopped beside her table, close enough for her to smell the beer on his breath. Jesus Christ, he said, loud enough for the entire diner to hear. What is that stench? Smells like something died and forgot to lie down. More laughter from his men. Maggie said nothing. She lifted her coffee cup, took a slow sip, and waited. Brennan leaned closer. His voice dropped to a hiss. Listen, Grandma, this is a soldier's town. Real soldiers. Men who actually serve their country. We don't need homeless trash stinking up the place and scaring away decent folks. Still, Maggie said nothing. Her silence seemed to infuriate him more than any words could have. Hey. He snapped his fingers in front of her face. I'm talking to you, you deaf old bat. Are you stupid or just too senile to understand English? Maggie set down her coffee cup. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her eyes to meet his. For just a moment, half a second, no more, she let him see. Let him see the predator behind the disguise. Let him see the woman who had killed 127 confirmed targets from distances most people couldn't imagine. Let him see the ghost mother. Brennan's smile faltered. Something flickered in his eyes, not quite fear, but the instinctive recognition that prey feels when a predator looks directly at them. Then Maggie lowered her gaze and the moment passed. I'm sorry, sir, she said, her voice thin and quavering. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'll leave right away. She fumbled with her bag, playing the helpless old woman perfectly. Brennan's confidence rushed back. He laughed, turning to his men. You see that, boys? That's how you handle these people. Remind them of their place. He reached down and grabbed Maggie's coffee cup, draining it in one gulp and slamming it down. Thanks for the coffee, Grandma. Now get out before I call the cops. Maggie stood slowly, her shoulders hunched, her eyes on the floor. She shuffled toward the door, the very picture of defeat. But as she passed Brennan, she let her hand brush against his jacket just enough to confirm the weapon's position. A Glock 19 aftermarket grip, no serial number visible. Definitely untraceable. Why would a training sergeant carry an illegal weapon? She filed the information away and pushed through the door into the fading Texas sunlight. Behind her, she heard Brennan's voice, loud and mocking. Smelly old woman, don't come back, you hear me? Next time I won't be so nice. His squad erupted in laughter. Maggie smiled. They had no idea what they had just done. The sun was setting when Maggie found the meeting point, an abandoned feed store 3 miles outside town. A black SUV waited in the shadow of a collapsed barn. Colonel Sarah Vance stepped out as Maggie approached. She was 58 years old, silver-haired, with the bearing of a woman who had commanded troops in 3 wars. Her uniform was crisp, her expression carefully controlled. But when she saw Maggie, something cracked. My God, Sarah whispered. Maggie, what have you done to yourself? Hello, Sarah. You look like a homeless woman. That's the point. Sarah crossed the distance between them and pulled Maggie into a fierce embrace. 8 years, she said. 8 years of silence. I thought you were dead. Some days I wished I was. Sarah pulled back, her eyes glistening. Danny wouldn't want this for you. Danny's dead. And you're not, which means you still have work to do. Sarah wiped her eyes, military composure returning. That's why I called you. She reached into the SUV and retrieved a thick folder. Fort Mason. On paper, it's a model training installation. High graduation rates, positive evaluations, commendations from 3 different generals. And off paper, Sarah's jaw tightened. 3 female recruits have disappeared in 18 months. The official reports say they withdrew voluntarily, transferred to other programs, couldn't handle the pressure. But I've talked to their families. These weren't quitters, Maggie. These were fighters, top of their classes, the kind of women who don't just walk away. Maggie opened the folder. 3 photographs stared back at her. 3 young faces full of promise and determination. Private First Class Amanda Chen, disappeared 14 months ago. Corporal Rebecca Santos, gone 8 months ago. And this one, Sarah tapped the 3rd photo. Private Jessica Moreno, 22 years old, disappeared 4 days ago. Maggie looked at the image. Jessica had dark eyes, strong features, the set jaw of someone who refused to back down. She's your goddaughter. Yes, Sarah's voice cracked. I got a message from her last week. 3 words, help me, trapped. Then nothing. Her phone went dead. Her email is shut down. The base says she transferred to Fort Leonard Wood, but I called there. They've never heard of her. You think she's still at Fort Mason? I think she's being held there, or worse. Maggie studied the photographs again. Something about Jessica reminded her of herself at that age, the same fire, the same refusal to be overlooked. Tell me about the command structure. Sarah pulled out another document. The base commander is Colonel Harrison Wells. Old school by the book, probably clueless about anything happening under his nose. The real power is his second-in-command, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Drake. A photograph accompanied the name. Drake was 48, hard-faced, with the eyes of a man who had long ago decided that rules were for other people. Drake runs a special unit called the Advanced Tactical Training Program. Officially, it's for high-potential recruits, accelerated advancement, specialized skills, fast-track to elite assignments. And unofficially, I don't know, but every woman who disappeared was part of that program. Maggie closed the folder. What about local law enforcement? The sheriff is an old army buddy of Drake's. They served together in Iraq. The base MPs are all Drake's hand-picked men. There's no one to report to. Inspector General. I've submitted 3 requests for investigation. All 3 were denied. Someone higher up is protecting Drake. Maggie stood silent for a long moment, watching the Texas stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Jessica Moreno was waiting. Scared, alone, running out of time. "What's my cover?" she finally asked. Sarah exhaled with relief. "Kitchen staff at the base commissary. You'll work food service, invisible, overlooked, exactly what you're pretending to be. Documentation. Already in the system. Margaret Holbrook, age 54. Recently widowed, no family, no connections, just another sad old woman looking for work. When do I start?" "Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Sarah reached into the SUV again and produced a small device no larger than a button. "Encrypted recorder. Audio only, but admissible in military tribunal. Use it wisely." Maggie took the device, weighing it in her palm. "Rules of engagement. Observe and report. Gather evidence. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Sarah paused. "And Maggie, if you find Jessica, if she's still alive, get her out. Whatever it takes. And if she's not..." Sarah's voice hardened. "Then make sure whoever's responsible never hurts another woman again." Maggie nodded slowly. She understood what Sarah wasn't saying. This wasn't an official operation. There would be no backup, no extraction team, no cavalry riding to the rescue. If she got caught, she would be on her own, just the way she'd been for 8 years. "I'll find her, Sarah." "I know you will." Sarah embraced her again, tighter this time. "Danny always said you were the best he ever trained. Said you had ice water in your veins and fire in your heart." Danny said a lot of things. "He also said you'd save the world someday if you ever stopped trying to hide from it." Maggie pulled back, something shifting in her chest. "Maybe it's time I stopped hiding." Such. The next morning, Maggie arrived at Fort Mason's main gate as the sun rose over the Texas desert. A young MP checked her documentation, barely glancing at her face. Why would he? She was just an old woman, a kitchen worker, nobody important. "Welcome to Fort Mason, ma'am. Commissary straight ahead, 3rd building on the left." "Thank you, young man." She shuffled through the gate, hunched and slow, playing her part perfectly. But inside, her mind was racing. The base was larger than she expected. Training fields stretched toward the horizon. Barracks lined up in precise rows. Young soldiers jogged past in formation, their cadence echoing off concrete walls. And everywhere she saw them, Drake's people. Men with the same skull and rifles patch she'd noticed on Brennan's unit. They moved through the base like they owned it, and regular soldiers stepped aside when they passed. Something was very, very wrong here. She found the commissary without difficulty. Inside, the smell of industrial cooking hit her immediately: powdered eggs, burnt coffee, military-grade breakfast food. A woman in her 60s looked up from behind the serving counter. She had dark skin, kind eyes, and hands that had clearly spent decades working. "You the new dishwasher?" "Yes, ma'am. Margaret Holbrook." "Rosa Delgado." The woman's handshake was firm. "I run the kitchen." "Well, I think I run it. The Army thinks differently." Despite herself, Maggie smiled. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mrs. Delgado." "It's Rosa. And don't thank me yet. The work is hard, the pay is terrible, and the soldiers treat us like furniture. But it's honest, which is more than I can say for most things around here." Something in her tone made Maggie pause. "Around here?" Rosa's expression flickered just for a moment before the professional mask returned. "Come on, I'll show you the dishwashing station. We've got 300 hungry soldiers coming through in 30 minutes. Does. The morning passed in a blur of scalding water, industrial soap, and endless streams of dirty trays. Maggie fell into the rhythm of it, her hands moving automatically while her mind observed everything. She noted which officers ate alone, which soldiers avoided certain tables, which sergeants commanded deference and which commanded fear. She watched Drake's men move through the commissary like wolves among sheep, confident, predatory, untouchable. And she watched for Jessica Moreno. The young woman's face was burned into her memory. But hour after hour, Jessica never appeared. It was nearly noon when Rosa appeared at her station. "Take a break. You've earned it." "I'm fine." That wasn't a request. Rosa's voice softened. "Come on, I'll make you some real coffee. Not that motor oil they serve the soldiers." They sat in the back storage room away from prying eyes and listening ears. Rosa produced a thermos and poured 2 cups of rich, dark coffee. "You're not really here to wash dishes, are you?" Maggie's hands froze around her cup. "Excuse me." "I've been around soldiers my whole life, mija. Grew up on military bases, married a Marine, buried a Marine. I know what warriors look like even when they're pretending to be something else." "I don't know what you're talking about." Rosa reached across and took Maggie's hand, turning it palm up. "These calluses," she said quietly. "Wrong places for a dishwasher. Right places for someone who spent years holding a rifle." Maggie said nothing. "And the way you watch everyone. The way you positioned yourself in the kitchen, back to the wall, clear sight lines to both exits. The way you counted Drake's men when they came through for breakfast. You're observant. I'm invisible. There's a difference." Rosa released her hand. "You're looking for her, aren't you? The Moreno girl." Maggie's heart kicked. "You know her. She used to come here late at night after Drake's special training sessions, always looking for coffee, always with bruises she tried to hide." Rosa's eyes darkened, always pretending everything was fine when anyone could see she was breaking. "When did you last see her?" 4 days ago. She came in around midnight, different that time, scared, really scared." "Did she say anything?" "She asked if I could get a message out for her. I said yes. Gave her paper and pen. She wrote something, folded it up, asked me to mail it. But before I could take it, one of Drake's men came looking for her." Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. "She stuffed the note in her pocket and ran. I haven't seen her since. They say she transferred." "They say a lot of things." Rosa leaned closer. "But her footlocker is still in her barracks. Her personal effects are still here. Nobody transfers without their belongings." Maggie felt the pieces clicking together, a pattern taking shape. "Rosa, has this happened before, women disappearing from Drake's program?" The older woman's face went pale. "2 others, Amanda Chen and Rebecca Santos. Same story, special training, late-night sessions, bruises, fear. Then they were gone. Transferred, they said. Couldn't handle the pressure, they said." "But you don't believe that?" "I believe what I see, and I've seen those girls, mija. They weren't quitters. They were fighters, until someone broke them." Maggie finished her coffee, her mind racing. "Rosa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." "Ask. Why are you telling me this? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be working for Drake." Rosa smiled, a sad, ancient smile that held decades of pain. "Because my daughter was stationed here 6 years ago, before she killed herself." The words hit like bullets. "Rosa, they called it depression, pressure of service, mental health issues." Rosa's voice was steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. "But I knew my Lisa. She was strong, happy. She loved being a soldier." "What happened?" "She was selected for Drake's program. 3 weeks later, she shot herself with her service weapon." Rosa wiped her eyes. The note she left said she was sorry. Sorry she wasn't strong enough. Sorry she couldn't stop what was happening. Sorry she couldn't protect the others. Maggie reached across and took Rosa's hand. "I'm so sorry. I've been waiting 6 years for someone to come looking. Someone who would actually see. Someone who would listen." Rosa's grip tightened. "You're that person, aren't you? You're here to stop them." Maggie made a decision. Sometimes trust was the only weapon that mattered. "My name isn't Margaret Holbrook. It's Margaret Hartwell. Master Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, retired. I'm here to find Jessica Moreno and shut down whatever Drake is running." Rosa's eyes widened. "Hartwell, like the name on the memorial wall." "Yes. My husband served here before Afghanistan. Before he died." "Dios mío." Rosa crossed herself. "The ghost mother. That's what they called you, isn't it? In the papers after the Yemen operation. You know about that." Everyone who served knows about that. The woman sniper who held off 50 insurgents to save the hostages. The woman who broke every record they said couldn't be broken. Rose's tears had stopped. Something new burned in her eyes, not grief, but hope. You're really her. I'm really her. Then God help Marcus Drake. Rosa squeezed Maggie's hand. Because nothing else will. That afternoon, Maggie found her chance. Drake and his senior officers were in a planning meeting, their absence creating a brief window of opportunity. She slipped away from the kitchen, moving through back corridors she had mapped in her mind throughout the morning. Drake's office was in the administrative building, 3rd floor. Basic security keypad lock, no cameras in the hallway. Arrogant, she thought. He believes no one would dare. The keypad took her 45 seconds. Standard military override code unchanged since she'd last been on active duty. Drake really was careless. Inside the office was exactly what she expected, utilitarian efficient, dominated by a massive desk covered in paperwork. She went straight for the computer. The password was laughably easy. Warrior 1776. She'd cracked it in 3 attempts. What she found inside made her stomach turn. Financial records showing payments to overseas security contractors. Performance evaluations of female recruits with details that belonged in a criminal investigation, not a training file. Emails discussing merchandise and delivery schedules, and a video folder labeled Insurance. She clicked the first file. Jessica Moreno appeared on screen. She was seated in a metal chair, face bruised, eyes swollen from crying. A man's voice. Drake's voice spoke from off-camera. State your name. Jessica Moreno. State your rank. Private United States Army. State what you did. Jessica's lips trembled. I stole money from the base commissary. I sold military secrets to foreign agents. Louder. I sold military secrets to foreign agents. She was sobbing now. Please, please let me go. I'll do whatever you want, just please. The video cut off. Maggie's hands shook as she downloaded the files to her phone. Not with fear, with rage. This wasn't just corruption. This was trafficking. Human beings. American soldiers being coerced, blackmailed, sold. And Jessica was still alive. Or at least she had been when this video was recorded. She was scrolling through more files when a name caught her eye. Lieutenant David Hartwell, conduct report. Her blood went cold. David, her nephew, Daniel's brother's son. 3 years ago, David had been dishonorably discharged from Fort Mason. The official story was misconduct, falsifying reports, insubordination conduct, unbecoming an officer. The family had never believed it. David swore he had tried to report something wrong on base, something that powerful people wanted buried. He had been telling the truth. Maggie opened the file. Drake had destroyed him, fabricated evidence, forged documents, paid witnesses to testify against him. All because David had gotten too close to the truth about the advanced tactical training program. Her nephew's career, his reputation, his life, all destroyed to protect a monster. She copied everything, every file, every email, every video. Then she heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy boots, multiple people, coming this way. She shut down the computer and moved toward the window. 3rd floor, 30 feet to the ground, survivable if necessary. The footsteps passed, a door opened elsewhere, voices faded. Maggie exhaled slowly. She had what she needed, evidence that would bury Drake and everyone connected to him. But she still didn't know where Jessica was being held, and time was running out. That evening, Maggie found her answer. She was scrubbing pots in the kitchen when she heard Brennan's voice in the serving area. Told you the transfer happens tomorrow night. Drake's got buyers lined up. We move the merchandise to the ranch, make the exchange, and we're done. What about the Moreno girl? Another voice, nervous. She's been trouble. Drake's handling her personally. She'll cooperate or she'll end up like the others. The others are dead. Exactly. Maggie's hands stilled in the soapy water. The ranch. Which ranch? Hartwell property. Perfect isolation. Drake bought it through a shell company 3 years ago. Nobody ever goes out there. The pot slipped from Maggie's hands, clattering into the sink. The Hartwell property, Daniel's family ranch, where they had planned to retire together, where they were supposed to grow old watching sunsets over the Texas desert. Drake was using her husband's land to traffic American soldiers. She gripped the edge of the sink, forcing herself to breathe. In, out, steady. Hey, you okay, mija? Rosa appeared beside her, concern in her eyes. Fine. Maggie's voice was strangled. Just fine. But she wasn't fine. She was furious. And tomorrow night she was going to end this. Late that night, Maggie slipped out of her temporary quarters and made her way to the base cemetery. The moon hung low over the Texas hills, casting silver light on rows of white headstones. So many dead. So many sacrifices. So many promises broken and kept. She found Daniel's name on the memorial wall, a bronze plaque among dozens of others. Bemsajint, Daniel R. Hartwell, Afghanistan 2016. Beloved husband, faithful servant, never forgotten. She pressed her hand against the cold metal. They're using our land, Danny. The ranch where we were going to grow old together. They're using it to destroy lives. The wind stirred, rustling the dry grass. I tried to disappear like I promised not to. I tried to be nothing. But you were right. The world still needs me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the worn trident patch she'd carried for 8 years. The one she had taken from Daniel's body on that mountain in Afghanistan. I'm going to stop them, tomorrow night, and then, and she pressed the patch to her lips. Then I'm coming to find you. She was walking back to her quarters when she heard it. A soft sound, almost like crying. She followed it to the edge of the training grounds where a young soldier sat alone in the darkness. Female. Early 20s. Her face was streaked with tears. Maggie approached slowly. Are you all right? The young woman looked up startled. Her eyes were swollen, her hands trembling. I'm fine. Just needed some air. You don't look fine, the soldier laughed bitterly. You're the kitchen lady, right? The new dishwasher. That's right, Margaret. Tessa Whitmore. She wiped her eyes. Sorry. You don't need to hear my problems. Maggie sat down beside her, careful to maintain the appearance of a harmless old woman. Sometimes talking helps. Tessa was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I was selected for the Advanced Tactical Training Program. Everyone says it's an honor. Fast track to elite assignments. Everything a soldier could want. But there's something wrong with it. Wrong with Drake. Wrong with all of it. Tessa's voice cracked. My friend Jessica, she was in the program too. She told me things, terrible things. And then she disappeared, and they say she transferred, but I know she wouldn't leave without telling me, and I don't know what to do, and I'm scared, and... Breathe. Maggie put a hand on the young woman's shoulder. Just breathe. Tessa took a shuddering breath. I tried to report it. Went to the MPs. They told me I was imagining things. Went to the chaplain. He said I should pray for clarity. Went to Colonel Wells, and Drake found out before I even got in the door. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. He called me into his office, smiled at me, said if I ever talked to anyone again, I'd end up like Jessica. What did he mean by that? I don't know. That's what scares me most. I don't know what he did to her. Maggie felt the familiar cold anger settling into her bones. How many young women had sat here in this same darkness, feeling this same hopelessness? How many had been broken by a system that was supposed to protect them? Tessa, listen to me very carefully. The young soldier looked up. Whatever you do, don't report anything else. Don't talk to anyone on this base. Keep your head down and wait. Wait for what? For tomorrow night. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. Maggie squeezed her shoulder. Just trust me. Can you do that? Tessa studied her face, really studied it, and something flickered in her eyes. A spark of recognition, or maybe just desperate hope. Who are you really? Someone who's going to make sure Marcus Drake never hurts another woman again. She stood brushing dirt from her worn clothes. Go back to your barracks, get some sleep. And tomorrow night, when you hear what's happened, remember, sometimes help comes from the places you least expect. She walked away, leaving Tessa Whitmore alone with her questions and her slowly kindling hope. In her quarters, Maggie opened her duffel bag and removed items she had carried for 8 years but never used. A rifle case, long, black, innocuous. Inside her Marine issue M40A5 sniper rifle, broken down into components. She had smuggled it out of Coronado when she left technically a crime, but she had known even then that someday she would need it again. Her hands moved with muscle memory, assembling the weapon in the darkness. Stock locked into receiver. Barrel attached. Scope mounted and calibrated. The rifle felt like an extension of herself. A part of her she had tried to amputate but could never truly remove. She loaded the magazine. Match-grade ammunition hand-selected for long-range accuracy. Then she sat in the darkness, holding the weapon across her lap and waited for tomorrow. For Jessica. For David. For Daniel. For every woman who had ever been made to feel small, helpless, invisible. Tomorrow night, the ghost mother would rise again, and Marcus Drake would learn what happened when you underestimated a smelly old woman. The morning arrived cold and unforgiving. Maggie had not slept. She had spent the hours in darkness running scenarios, calculating distances, planning for every contingency. The rifle lay beside her bed, cleaned and ready, waiting for nightfall. But first, she had work to do. She arrived at the commissary before sunrise, her disguise firmly in place. Rosa was already there preparing the industrial coffee makers for another day of feeding soldiers who would never notice the women who served them. "You look like you didn't sleep," Rosa said quietly. "I didn't. Tonight. Rosa nodded slowly. She reached into her apron and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I found something. After you left yesterday, I went through the cleaning supply closet. There's a vent that connects to Drake's adjutant's office. I heard them talking." Maggie took the paper. Rosa had written coordinates times names. "The transfer is happening at 2200 hours. They're moving 3 women, Jessica, and 2 others from the previous disappearances. They're alive, Maggie. All 3 of them, being held in an underground bunker at the ranch. How do you know the others are still alive?" "Because I heard Drake say he needed them for the buyers. Said the foreign clients wanted proof of life before they completed the transaction." Rosa's voice cracked. "He's selling them, Maggie, American soldiers, being sold like cattle." Maggie felt the rage building in her chest, but she forced it down. Rage was useful, but only when controlled. Did they mention security? Brennan's team, all 6 of them, plus 4 private contractors Drake hired, ex-military, probably mercenaries. And Drake himself will be there for the exchange. 11 targets. 11 devils, Rosa corrected, and 1 angel with a rifle. Despite everything, Maggie almost smiled. "I need one more thing from you, Rosa. Name it. When this is over, when the shooting starts, I need you to call this number." She pressed a card into Rosa's hand. "Colonel Sarah Vance. She'll have a team ready to move, but they can't come in until the exchange is happening. We need to catch them in the act." "What about you?" "I'll be providing overwatch." Rosa looked at her for a long moment. "You're not planning to survive this, are you?" Maggie didn't answer. "Maggie, I've been waiting 8 years to see my husband again. If tonight is the night, then tonight is the night." She squeezed Rosa's hand. "But I'm going to make damn sure those women walk out alive first." The morning breakfast rush began, and they separated 2 invisible women moving through a world that refused to see them. Maggie was elbow-deep in dirty dishes when she heard the commotion. Raised voices. A crash. The sound of a woman crying. She moved toward the serving area, staying in the shadows. Brennan was there, his squad flanking him. They had cornered one of the young kitchen workers, a girl barely out of high school, Mexican-American, probably related to Rosa. "I asked you a question," Brennan snarled. "Where's the old woman, the new dishwasher? I don't know who you mean. Don't lie to me. He grabbed the girl's arm, twisting it. Gray hair smells like a garbage dump started yesterday. Where is she? Maggie stepped out of the shadows. Looking for me, Sergeant. Brennan spun his eyes, narrowing. There you are. Let the girl go. Or what? He laughed, but there was something different in his eyes today. Something wary. What are you going to do, Grandma? Hit me with your mop? I said let her go. Brennan released the girl who fled toward the kitchen. He stepped closer to Maggie, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Someone's been asking questions about you. Running your background. Margaret Holbrook doesn't exist before 6 months ago. No social security history, no tax records, no address history. It's like you appeared out of thin air. Maggie's heart kicked, but her face remained blank. I'm just an old woman looking for work. No, you're not. Brennan circled her slowly. I've seen a lot of spooks in my time. Intelligence officers, undercover investigators. You've got the same look, the same careful movements, the same way of watching everything without seeming to watch anything. You're paranoid. Am I? He stopped directly in front of her. Drake wants to see you, now. And if you're smart, you'll tell him everything he wants to know. Because the alternative, he smiled. Well, let's just say Drake has ways of making people talk. Maggie calculated her options. She could take Brennan now, break his arm, incapacitate his squad, disappear into the base. But that would blow the operation. Jessica and the others would be moved and she'd never find them. Lead the way, Sergeant. Brennan's smile widened. Smart choice, Grandma. They marched her across the base, 6 armed men surrounding one unarmed old woman. Soldiers they passed looked away, unwilling to get involved. The message was clear. Drake's people operated with impunity. Drake's office was on the 3rd floor, the same office Maggie had infiltrated yesterday. She kept her face neutral, giving nothing away. He was waiting behind his desk when they entered. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Drake, 48 years old, hard-faced, cold-eyed, the kind of man who had long ago decided that power was the only thing that mattered. Leave us, he said to Brennan. Sir, I don't think... I said leave us. Brennan hesitated, then nodded. The door closed behind him. Drake studied Maggie for a long moment, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Margaret Holbrook, he said finally. Or should I call you something else? Margaret is fine. Is it? He rose from his desk, circling her the way Brennan had. You know I've been doing this for a very long time, running this operation, selecting the right candidates, eliminating the problems, and in all those years I've developed a sense for when something is wrong. And something is wrong with me. Everything is wrong with you. He stopped in front of her. Your background doesn't check out. Your behavior is inconsistent with your cover story. And this morning I found evidence that someone accessed my computer yesterday. Someone with military-grade override codes. Maggie said nothing. Here's what I think. Drake's voice was almost conversational. I think you're an investigator. Maybe IG, maybe CID, maybe something else entirely. I think someone sent you to look into my operation, and I think you've already found enough to cause me significant problems. You think a lot of things. Watch. I know a lot of things. He returned to his desk and opened a drawer. For instance, I know that Colonel Sarah Vance has been trying to get an investigation started for months. I know her goddaughter is one of my current guests, and I know that Vance has a history with a certain retired Marine sniper, a woman who disappeared 8 years ago after her husband died in Afghanistan. Maggie's blood went cold. Drake pulled out a photograph and placed it on the desk. It was her, younger in uniform, receiving a commendation. The ghost mother. Master Gunnery Sergeant Margaret Hartwell, Drake said softly. The most decorated female sniper in Marine Corps history. Holder of 17 confirmed kills over 2,000 meters. Trainer of 3 generations of special operators. He smiled. And the previous owner of the property I'm currently using for my business operations. How did you... I'm a very thorough man, Sergeant Hartwell. Or should I say Mrs. Hartwell. After all, that ranch belonged to your late husband's family, didn't it? Before I acquired it through, shall we say, creative legal channels. Maggie's hands trembled, not with fear, with rage. You destroyed my nephew, she said quietly. David Hartwell. He tried to report what you were doing, and you destroyed him. He was a liability. Liabilities get eliminated. Drake shrugged. Just like you're about to become a liability. Is that a threat? It's a fact. He pressed a button on his desk. Brennan, come in here. The door opened. Brennan and two of his men entered. Sergeant Hartwell is going to be our guest for a while, Drake said. Take her to the bunker with the others. She can keep Jessica Moreno company until the transfer tonight. Brennan grinned. With pleasure, sir. He reached for Maggie's arm. She let him take it. Let him think he had won. Let him think she was just a helpless old woman, finally caught, finally defeated. And then she moved. Her free hand shot up, striking Brennan's throat with surgical precision. He gasped, staggering backward, hands clutching his crushed windpipe. The second man reached for his weapon. Maggie was faster. She caught his arm twisted and used his own momentum to slam him into the third soldier. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Drake lunged for his desk drawer for the weapon she knew was inside. She was there first. Her hand closed around the Glock and she had it pressed against Drake's temple before he could draw his next breath. Don't, she whispered. Move. Drake froze. Behind her, Brennan was still choking the other two men, groaning on the floor. You're making a mistake, Drake said. His voice was calm, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Kill me, and you'll never find those women. They'll die in that bunker, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you could have saved them. Or I could shoot you in the kneecap and make you tell me exactly where they are. You don't have time. The moment shots are fired, my men will lock down the base. You'll never get out alive. He was right. She knew he was right. But she also knew something he didn't. I don't need to get out alive, she said. I just need to get those women out. My life stopped mattering 8 years ago. Something flickered in Drake's eyes, the first real fear she had seen from him. What do you want? The exact location of the bunker, the access codes, and a 2-hour head start before you sound any alarms. And if I refuse, Maggie pressed the gun harder against his skull. Then I'll kill everyone in this room, fight my way across the base, and burn your entire operation to the ground. I may die in the process, but I guarantee you'll die first. A long moment passed. Drake's eyes searched her face, looking for weakness, for hesitation, for any sign that she was bluffing. He found none. The bunker is beneath the old barn on the Hartwell property. Access code is 772419. There's a hidden entrance under the horse trough. How many guards? 2 during the day, more at night for the transfer. And the women, sedated but alive, all 3 of them. Maggie stepped back slowly, keeping the weapon trained on Drake. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out of this office. You're going to wait 30 minutes before doing anything. If I see any sign that you've raised an alarm, if I hear so much as a whisper that your men are mobilizing, I will come back here and finish what I started. Are we clear? You won't survive the night. Maybe not, but neither will you. She backed toward the door. 30 minutes, Drake. Don't waste them. She slipped out of the office, closing the door behind her. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. But she had what she needed. Location. Codes. Time. Now she just needed to get to the ranch before Drake broke his word. She made it to the motor pool in 7 minutes. A supply truck was idling near the loading dock keys and the ignition driver nowhere in sight. Maggie climbed in and drove. The base gate was the most dangerous moment. If Drake had already raised the alarm, she'd be stopped here, questioned, arrested, or worse. The guard looked at her clipboard, looked at the truck, looked at Maggie's worn clothes and gray hair. Commissary delivery. That's right. Little old for this job, aren't you? Maggie smiled her harmless old woman smile. Young people these days don't want to work. Someone has to do it. The guard laughed and waved her through. 3 miles later, Maggie pulled off the main road and parked behind an abandoned gas station. She checked her watch. 12 minutes since she left Drake's office. He would have already raised the alarm. His men would be mobilizing. But she had a head start. She opened her bag and retrieved her rifle, assembling it with practiced efficiency. Then she started walking. The Hartwell ranch was 7 miles away. On foot through rough terrain carrying 40 pounds of equipment, she could make it in 2 hours, maybe less if she pushed. The sun was climbing toward noon. The transfer wasn't until 2200 hours. 10 hours. Plenty of time to get in position. Plenty of time to save 3 lives. Plenty of time to keep her promise to Daniel. She walked. 2 hours later, she reached the ridge overlooking the ranch. From this vantage point, she could see everything: the old farmhouse, the collapsed barn, the horse trough that concealed the bunker entrance. And she could see the guards. Not 2, as Drake had said. 8. Patrolling the perimeter, checking sight lines, maintaining disciplined rotations. Drake had lied. Of course he had lied. But it didn't matter. She had faced worse odds in Yemen, in Afghanistan, in a dozen countries whose names never appeared in the newspapers. She settled into her position, rifle steady, scope calibrated, and waited. The afternoon passed slowly. She watched the guards rotate, watched the supply trucks come and go, watched Drake's men prepare for the night's transfer. At 1800 hours, more vehicles arrived. Brennan's squad, the mercenaries Rosa had mentioned. And finally Drake himself, stepping out of a black SUV with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. Maggie tracked him through her scope. 1 shot. She could end it right now, but if she fired now, the women would die in that bunker. Drake's men would execute them the moment they heard the shot. She needed to wait for the buyers, wait for the women to be brought out for the exchange, wait for the perfect moment. Patience. That's what Daniel had always said. The shot will come. Trust your training. She trusted. At 2100 hours, her phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. Vance is ready. Team standing by 20 miles out. Give the word. Maggie typed back. Wait for my signal. Not until the women are above ground. At 2145 hours, vehicles approached from the east. 3 SUVs, expensive, armored. Foreign plates. The buyers had arrived. Maggie watched through her scope as men emerged. 4 bodyguards heavily armed. And 1 man in an expensive suit, Middle Eastern, maybe Saudi, with the bearing of someone who was used to buying whatever he wanted. Drake greeted him with a handshake and a smile. Mr. Nassar, thank you for coming. The merchandise is ready. Being brought up now. Brennan spoke into a radio. Minutes later, 3 figures emerged from the barn supported by guards. Women. Blindfolded, stumbling. Jessica Moreno, Amanda Chen, Rebecca Santos. Alive. Maggie's finger found the trigger. Not yet. Wait for them to be clear of the entrance. Wait for the guards to spread out. Wait for the perfect shot. Nassar examined the women like livestock. He grabbed Jessica's chin, turning her face toward the light. This one is beautiful, strong. She will bring a good price. All 3 have military training, Drake said. Combat skills. Weapons proficiency. Exactly what your clients requested. And they are compliant. They will be, or they'll be made to be. Nassar nodded. The agreed price then. 3 million transferred within the hour. Excellent. They shook hands. Maggie sent the text to Rosa now. Then she took her first shot. The bullet covered 800 meters in less than a second. Nassar's communications specialist, the one with the satellite phone, dropped without a sound. For 2 heartbeats, no one understood what had happened. Then chaos erupted. Maggie's second shot took out a guard near Jessica. Her third dropped one of the mercenaries. Her fourth shattered the knee of a man reaching for his weapon. Sniper, someone screamed. We've got a sniper. Drake dove behind his SUV. Brennan grabbed Jessica, using her as a human shield. Show yourself, Brennan shouted into the darkness. Show yourself, or I put a bullet in her head. Maggie keyed her radio. She had taken it from Drake's desk, same frequency as his men. Sergeant Brennan, this is the smelly old woman. Silence. Then, you. Let the women go. Surrender now, and maybe you'll live to see morning. Brennan laughed, but there was fear in it. You're 1 person. We've got 15 men. You had 15 men. Now you have 11. In 30 seconds, you'll have 10. In 60 seconds, you'll have 9. I can do this all night, Sergeant. Can you? Another shot. Another body dropped. 10 men. "She's on the ridge," someone shouted. "Northwest." Muzzle flashes erupted as they fired blindly into the darkness. Bullets whipped past Maggie's position, but none came close. They couldn't see her. Couldn't find her. She was a ghost. 9 men, 8, 7. Brennan's voice cracked. "Who the hell are you?" Maggie chambered another round. "I'm the woman whose husband you've been desecrating. I'm the woman whose nephew you destroyed. I'm the woman you called smelly and homeless and trash." She fired again. 6 men. "And I'm the woman who's going to make sure you never hurt anyone again." The distant sound of helicopters reached her ears. Vance's team incoming. Brennan heard it too. He looked up at the approaching lights, and in that moment of distraction, Jessica Moreno made her move. She drove her elbow into his stomach, twisted free, and ran. Brennan raised his weapon. Maggie fired. The bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. "Don't," she whispered into the radio. "Touch her." The helicopters descended. Armed soldiers rappelled down, securing the perimeter, taking down the remaining guards. Drake tried to run, but 2 Marines tackled him before he made it 10 feet. And through it all, Maggie stayed in her position, watching through her scope, making sure no one else tried to hurt those women. When it was over, when Drake was in handcuffs and Brennan was being loaded onto a medical helicopter, and the 3 women were wrapped in blankets and receiving care, only then did Maggie lower her rifle. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. She pressed her hand against Daniel's trident patch, still in her pocket, still close to her heart. "I kept my promise," she whispered into the Texas night. "I kept my promise. Danny." Below, Colonel Vance was scanning the ridge, searching for her. Maggie stood slowly, her joints protesting after hours in position. She shouldered her rifle and began the long walk down. The mission was complete. But the real battle, the battle for justice, for accountability, for making sure this never happened again, that was just beginning. And Margaret Hartwell, the smelly old woman, the ghost mother, the deadliest sniper most people had never heard of, was ready to fight it. The walk down from the ridge took longer than Maggie expected. Her body was screaming, muscles locked from hours of stillness, joints protesting every step, lungs burning in the dry Texas air. She was 54 years old, and the years had taken their toll in ways she couldn't ignore anymore. But she kept walking. Below, the ranch had transformed into a military operation. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. Armed soldiers secured the perimeter. Medical personnel rushed between vehicles, treating the wounded, covering the dead. Colonel Sarah Vance spotted her first. "Maggie." Sarah ran toward her, abandoning protocol, abandoning rank, abandoning everything except the friendship that had survived 3 decades and 2 wars. They embraced in the middle of the chaos. Sarah was shaking. "I thought you were dead," Sarah whispered. "When the shooting started, when I heard how many targets you engaged, I thought, I'm hard to kill." "Don't joke. Not about this." Sarah pulled back, her eyes glistening. "You saved them, Maggie, all 3 of them. They're alive because of you. They're alive because you believe something was wrong. I just pulled the trigger." A commotion near the barn drew their attention. Medics were helping the 3 rescued women toward a waiting helicopter. Jessica Moreno was walking under her own power despite everything she had endured. She looked up, scanning the crowd, searching for something. Her eyes found Maggie. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. The old woman who had pretended to be invisible, and the young woman who had refused to be silenced. Then Jessica broke away from the medics and ran. She threw her arms around Maggie with a force that nearly knocked them both to the ground. "It was you," Jessica sobbed. "This whole time it was you. The extra food in the kitchen. The way you looked at me like you knew. It was always you. I'm sorry I couldn't move faster. You came. That's what matters. You came when no one else would." Maggie held her, this young woman who reminded her so much of herself at that age. Fierce, determined, unbroken, despite everything they had tried to do to her. "Your godmother is here," Maggie said gently. "She's been fighting for you since the day you disappeared." Jessica pulled back, tears streaming down her face. "Aunt Sarah." Sarah stepped forward, and the 2 embraced. Their crying mixed together the sound of relief, of survival of a family reunited against impossible odds. Maggie stepped back, giving them space. Her job here was done. But as she turned to leave, a voice stopped her. "Sergeant Hartwell." She turned. A young Marine stood at attention, his face professionally neutral. "Ma'am, General Morrison is requesting your presence." Immediately. Maggie's eyebrows rose. "General Morrison is here." "Yes, ma'am. He flew in from Washington 2 hours ago. He's in the command vehicle." She exchanged a glance with Sarah, who looked equally surprised. "Go," Sarah said. "I've got Jessica. We'll talk when you're done." The command vehicle was a mobile fortress, communications equipment, tactical displays, enough technology to coordinate a small war. General Thomas Morrison stood in the center of it all, studying a screen that showed the ranch from above. He was 63 years old, silver-haired, with the bearing of a man who had spent 4 decades climbing the ranks of military command. Maggie had met him once years ago when he had pinned a medal on her chest and called her a credit to the Corps. She wondered if he remembered. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Hartwell," he said without turning around. "Or do you prefer Mrs. Hartwell now?" "Maggie is fine, sir." He turned to face her. His eyes were sharp, assessing, giving nothing away. "I've been reading your file, Maggie. Impressive career. 26 years of service. 17 confirmed kills over 2,000 meters. Training record that's never been matched." He paused. "And then you disappeared. 8 years of nothing. Not even a forwarding address." "I needed time, sir." "Time." He let the word hang in the air. "And yet here you are, single-handedly dismantling a human trafficking operation that has apparently been running under our noses for years." "I had help. Colonel Vance, yes, and a kitchen worker named Rosa Delgado, from what I understand." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "What I don't understand is how this happened in the first place. How does a lieutenant colonel run a criminal enterprise on a military installation for a decade without anyone noticing?" Maggie met his gaze directly. "Because people who noticed were destroyed, sir. My nephew tried to report it 3 years ago. Drake fabricated evidence, paid witnesses, and had him dishonorably discharged. There were others who tried. They were transferred, silenced, or worse. And the command structure, Colonel Wells, either incompetent or complicit. I haven't determined which." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I have. He's complicit. We found records in Drake's files, payments to Wells totaling over $2 million. He's being arrested as we speak." Maggie felt something shift in her chest. She had suspected, but hearing it confirmed. "How deep does this go, sir?" "That's what I'm trying to determine." Morrison turned back to his screens. "Drake didn't operate alone. He had suppliers, buyers, logistics support. This is a network, not a single bad actor. The man who came tonight, Nassar, he mentioned clients, plural. We're interrogating him now. He's not being cooperative." "Then let me talk to him." Morrison turned sharply. "Excuse me. Let me talk to him. I've interrogated harder men than a rich buyer who just watched his operation collapse. He'll talk to me." "With all due respect, you're a retired sniper, not an intelligence officer." "With all due respect, sir, I just took down 9 armed men from 800 meters while you were flying in from Washington. I think I can handle a conversation." A long silence stretched between them. Morrison's eyes narrowed, then he almost smiled. "You really are everything your file says you are." "I'm more." "Apparently so." He nodded toward a smaller vehicle nearby. "Nassar is in there. You have 15 minutes." The vehicle was configured as a mobile holding cell. Nassar sat in a metal chair, hands cuffed to a table, his expensive suit now stained with dirt and sweat. 2 MPs stood guard. He looked up when Maggie entered. His expression shifted from confusion to contempt. "They send an old woman to question me." "This is an insult." Maggie sat across from him, her movements slow and deliberate. "You don't remember me, do you?" "Why would I remember you?" "Because 2 hours ago, I killed 7 of your men. Because I'm the reason you're sitting in this chair, instead of flying home with 3 American soldiers in your cargo hold." Nassar's contempt flickered. He studied her more carefully. You're the sniper. I'm the sniper. Impossible. You're old. You're smelly homeless. A nobody. Maggie leaned forward. That's what Sergeant Brennan thought too. He's in surgery right now. I could have killed him, but I wanted him to live long enough to stand trial. Nassar said nothing. Here's how this works, Maggie continued. You're going to tell me everything. Names, locations, buyers, the entire network, every client you've ever sold an American soldier to. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm going to recommend that you be transferred to a black site. No trial, no lawyers, no human rights observers, just you, a small room, and people who are much less friendly than I am. You're bluffing. America doesn't do that. America does a lot of things, Mr. Nassar. Most of them never make the newspapers. She stood walking slowly around the table. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're tough enough to handle what comes next. After all, you're a big man. You buy and sell people. You must be very powerful. She stopped behind him, her voice dropping to a whisper. But here's what you don't understand. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm not bound by rules of engagement or military protocol. I'm just an old woman who has nothing left to lose and a very particular set of skills. Her hand rested on his shoulder. So ask yourself, is protecting your clients worth dying for? Because I promise you, Mr. Nassar, if you don't talk to me, you will not survive the week. Nassar's breathing quickened. Sweat beaded on his forehead. They'll kill me, he whispered. If I talk, they'll kill me. Then you have a choice. Certain death if you talk. Possible death if you don't. Maggie returned to her seat. But I can offer you something else. What? Protection. A new identity. A chance to disappear before your clients realize you've betrayed them. You can do that. I can do anything, Mr. Nassar. I just killed 9 men in under 5 minutes. Arranging your protection is comparatively simple. A long silence. Nassar's hands trembled against the table. There's a list, he finally said. Names of buyers, encrypted, stored on a server in Dubai. I can give you the access codes. Keep talking. Drake wasn't the only supplier. There are others. Military installations across the country. Fort Mason was just one node in the network. Maggie's blood went cold. How many nodes? 7, maybe 8. I don't know all of them. Who runs the network? Nassar's face went pale. I can't. Who runs the network? If I tell you I'm dead, they have people everywhere. Military, government, law enforcement. There's nowhere to hide. Maggie reached across the table and grabbed his cuffed hands. Look at me. Look at me. She waited until his terrified eyes met hers. I was invisible for 8 years, completely off the grid. No one found me because I didn't want to be found. If I can disappear, I can make you disappear. But you have to give me something real. Nassar's resolve crumbled. His name is Whitmore, Senator David Whitmore. He runs the network from Washington. Has for 15 years. Maggie's mind raced. Senator Whitmore, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, one of the most powerful men in the American government. You're certain? He attended 3 of the auctions personally. I've seen his face. I've heard his voice. He refers to the operation as his retirement fund. Nassar laughed bitterly. You think Drake was the monster, Drake was nothing. Whitmore is the one who built this, who protects it, who profits from it. Maggie stood slowly. Her legs felt unsteady. The server access codes. Write them down. Nassar complied, his handwriting shaky. One more thing, he said as she took the paper. You asked why I came tonight. Why risk a personal appearance? Why? Because Whitmore wanted proof that the system was still working. He's been nervous lately, worried about exposure. Tonight was supposed to reassure him. Nassar's eyes were hollow. When he finds out what happened here, he'll burn everything. Everyone who knows. Including me. Including Drake. Including you. Maggie folded the paper and put it in her pocket. Then we'd better move fast. She was halfway back to the command vehicle when her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, you haven't. Check the news. W." Her stomach dropped. She pulled up a news app. The headline hit her like a physical blow. Senator Whitmore announces emergency hearing on military corruption, calls for investigation into rogue elements at Fort Mason. The story was already spreading. Whitmore was on camera expressing shock and outrage at the criminal activity that had apparently been occurring without the knowledge of legitimate military leadership. He was calling for investigations, demanding accountability, positioning himself as the hero who would clean up the mess. He was getting ahead of the story. Maggie ran. General Morrison looked up as she burst into the command vehicle. "Senator Whitmore," she gasped. "He's the one running the network. I know." Morrison's voice was grim. "I just got off the phone with the Pentagon. Whitmore is claiming that Drake was operating independently, that Fort Mason was an isolated incident. He's already launched a media blitz. He's covering his tracks. And doing it brilliantly. By morning, he'll be the face of reform. The man who exposed corruption. The hero of the whole damn story. We have evidence. Nassar gave me server access codes, financial records, client lists, which will take weeks to decrypt and verify. By then, Whitmore will have buried everything, intimidated witnesses, destroyed records. He's been doing this for 15 years. He knows how to survive." Maggie's mind raced. There had to be something. Some way to expose him before he escaped. Then it hit her. "The women," she said. "Jessica, Amanda, Rebecca. They were in Drake's bunker for months. They must have heard things, seen things. Drake was arrogant. He probably talked in front of them. You want to put traumatized victims on the stand against a sitting U.S. senator. I want to give them the choice. They survived hell. They deserve to be part of burning it down." Morrison studied her for a long moment. "You really don't stop, do you? I made a promise. To my husband. To those women. To every person who's ever been destroyed by men like Whitmore and Drake." She stepped closer. "I'm going to keep that promise, General, with or without your help." A heavy silence filled the command vehicle. Then Morrison nodded slowly. "What do you need?" Jessica Moreno was in the medical tent being examined by doctors. Her face was bruised, her wrists raw from restraints, but her eyes were clear, alert, angry. "I remember everything," she said before Maggie could even ask. "Every word Drake said, every phone call he made when he thought we were too drugged to hear, every name he dropped when he was bragging about how untouchable he was. He mentioned Senator Whitmore. More than mentioned. Whitmore called the bunker directly. 3 times in the last week, checking on the merchandise, making sure everything was ready for tonight." Jessica's voice hardened. "He called us merchandise, like we were things instead of people." "Would you testify in front of a congressional committee on camera, knowing that Whitmore will try to destroy you?" Jessica laughed a hard, bitter sound. "Lady, I've been destroyed. I've been broken down and rebuilt and broken again. There's nothing that man can do to me that's worse than what I've already survived." She grabbed Maggie's hand. "I'll testify. I'll stand up in front of the whole damn country and tell them exactly what happened. And I'll look David Whitmore in the eye while I do it." Amanda Chen and Rebecca Santos said the same thing. They had been held longer, suffered more, but their resolve was unbreakable. 3 women who had been treated as disposable. 3 witnesses who refused to be silenced. By dawn, they had assembled a case. Jessica's testimony, Amanda's detailed memory of phone calls and conversations, Rebecca's account of previous transfers she had witnessed before being held herself, and most damning of all, a video. Drake, in his arrogance, had recorded his meetings with Whitmore. Insurance, he called it. Leverage in case the senator ever tried to cut him loose. The video showed Whitmore in the bunker examining the women, discussing prices with Nassar, laughing about how easy it was to traffic American soldiers when you controlled the oversight committees. "This ends him," Morrison said when he saw it. "This ends everything." But Maggie wasn't finished. "I want to deliver it personally," she said. "Deliver it." Whitmore is holding a press conference in 6 hours. He's going to announce his investigation. Position himself as the savior. Maggie's eyes were cold. I want to be there when his world falls apart. Morrison started to object, then stopped. You've earned it, he said finally. But if you're going to Washington, you're not going alone. The press conference was held on the steps of the Capitol building. Senator David Whitmore stood at the podium surrounded by cameras and microphones, delivering a carefully crafted speech about accountability and reform. What happened at Fort Mason is a tragedy. He declared, his voice ringing with practiced sincerity. But I promise the American people that we will find out who is responsible. We will hold them accountable, and we will ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The crowd applauded. Maggie watched from the back, her presence unremarkable. Just another old woman in a sea of reporters and politicians. Rosa stood beside her. So did Colonel Vance, and General Morrison, who had arranged credentials for all of them. Now, Rosa whispered, not yet. Whitmore continued his performance. He spoke of victims and villains, of broken systems and necessary reforms, of his personal commitment to justice. He was good. Decades of practice had made him convincing, but Maggie was better. When Whitmore paused for breath, she moved. Senator Whitmore, she called out, her voice carrying across the crowd. I have a question. Heads turned. Cameras swiveled. Whitmore squinted into the crowd, his smile never wavering. Of course. I welcome questions from the American people. Maggie pushed toward the front, her movement slow and deliberate. You spoke about accountability, about finding out who's responsible for what happened at Fort Mason. That's right. Then let me help you. She reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. I have a video, Senator. A video of you, in the bunker, examining the women, discussing prices with the buyers. The crowd went silent. Whitmore's smile froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Then let's watch it together. Maggie turned the tablet toward the cameras. Let's let the American people decide what it means. She pressed play, and on every screen in America, Senator David Whitmore's world collapsed. The video was damning, undeniable. Whitmore's face, his voice, his hands touching the women he had sold. His laughter as he discussed prices. His casual cruelty toward human beings he considered property. When it ended, chaos erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Security moved toward Maggie, but she stood her ground. Whitmore's face had gone white. His mouth opened and closed, searching for words that wouldn't come. Who are you? He finally managed. Maggie smiled. I'm Master Gunnery Sergeant Margaret Hartwell, United States Marine Corps, retired. I'm the woman who saved those girls you tried to sell. I'm the woman who exposed your operation. And I'm the woman who just ended your career. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. You called them merchandise. You treated them like objects. You destroyed lives for profit and power. Her eyes burned into his. But you forgot something important, Senator. You forgot that sometimes the people you overlook are the most dangerous of all. FBI agents were pushing through the crowd, now moving toward the podium. David Whitmore, you are under arrest for human trafficking, conspiracy, and violation of federal civil rights statutes. You have the right to remain silent. Whitmore tried to run. He made it 3 steps before an agent tackled him. As they dragged him away in handcuffs, Maggie turned to face the cameras. There's more, she said. Senator Whitmore was not acting alone. This network has tentacles throughout the military, the government, law enforcement. We have names, we have evidence, and we will not stop until every single person responsible is brought to justice. She paused. I was invisible for 8 years. I hid from the world because I thought I had nothing left to give. But I was wrong. We are never too old, too tired, or too broken to stand up for what's right. And we are never too powerless to make a difference. Behind her, Rosa was crying. Colonel Vance stood at attention. General Morrison nodded slowly, something like respect in his eyes. And somewhere in the crowd, watching on a smartphone, Tessa Whitmore, the young cadet from Fort Mason, saw the senator being arrested. Saw his face as his empire crumbled. The senator who shared her last name. The father she had never told anyone about. The man who had arranged for her to be stationed at Fort Mason, who had promised her a fast-track career, who had done things she was only now beginning to understand. Tessa's hands trembled as she watched. Then she straightened her shoulders and started walking toward the FBI agents. She had a story to tell, and this time someone would listen. The FBI agents saw her coming. A young woman in army fatigues, tears streaming down her face, walking toward them with the determined stride of someone who had made an irreversible decision. "I need to speak to someone," Tessa Whitmore said, her voice cracking. "About the senator. About my father." The agent's eyes widened. "Your father?" "David Whitmore is my father, and I know things he did, things he made me do." She was shaking now, the words pouring out like water from a broken dam. "He stationed me at Fort Mason on purpose, said it would help my career, but I think he was grooming me, training me, getting me ready to be part of his network. Ma'am, you need to come with us. I know. I want to. I want to tell you everything." Maggie watched from across the chaos as agents escorted Tessa away. Something twisted in her chest, pity maybe, or recognition. Another young woman destroyed by the men who should have protected her. Rosa appeared at her side. Dios mío, his own daughter. His own daughter. These men. Rosa crossed herself. There is no depth they will not sink to. Colonel Vance approached her phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call and turned to Maggie with an expression that was equal parts triumph and exhaustion. "It's done. The FBI is executing warrants across 7 states. Every installation Nassar mentioned, every contact Drake had. The entire network is being dismantled as we speak. How many arrests? So far 47, and counting." Vance's voice hardened. "Including Colonel Wells. He's been singing like a bird since they put him in handcuffs, trying to cut a deal. Will they give him one? Not a chance. The Attorney General is personally overseeing this case. She wants blood." Maggie nodded slowly. Justice was coming, slowly, imperfectly, but coming nonetheless. "What happens now?" "Now," Vance smiled grimly. "Now comes the hard part. Trials, testimony, making sure these bastards actually pay for what they've done. And me." Vance's expression softened. "You're a hero, Maggie. Whether you want to be or not. Every network is running your face. Every newspaper is printing your name. The president himself called General Morrison an hour ago to ask about the old woman who single-handedly dismantled a human trafficking ring." Maggie felt something cold settle in her stomach. Attention. Exposure. Everything she had spent 8 years avoiding. "I don't want to be a hero." "Too late." Vance put a hand on her shoulder. "But if it helps, you're not alone anymore. Whatever comes next, you've got people standing with you." The next 72 hours were a blur of interviews, debriefings, and statements. Maggie told her story so many times it began to feel like someone else's life, a movie she had watched, rather than events she had lived. The media was relentless. They called her the Ghost Mother, the Desert Phantom, America's deadliest grandmother. Headlines screamed her name from every screen, every newspaper, every website. She hated it, but she endured it because the alternative was worse. If she didn't control the narrative, someone else would. And she had learned the hard way what happened when powerful people controlled narratives. On the 3rd day, General Morrison summoned her to a secure facility outside Washington. "There's someone who wants to see you," he said. "Someone who's been waiting a long time." He led her to a small conference room. Inside, a man sat at a table, his head bowed, his hands clasped in front of him. David Hartwell looked up when she entered. Her nephew, Daniel's brother's son, the young officer whose career had been destroyed because he had tried to do the right thing. He had aged badly in 3 years. His hair had gone gray at the temples. Deep lines creased his face. His eyes held the hollow look of a man who had lost everything and was still trying to figure out why. "Aunt Maggie," he whispered. She crossed the room and pulled him into her arms. He broke. Years of pain, years of injustice, years of believing that no one would ever know the truth. It all came pouring out in racking sobs that shook his entire body. "I tried," he gasped. "I tried to tell them. I tried to report what was happening. And they destroyed me. They took everything. My career, my reputation, my family. I know. Everyone thought I was a liar, a criminal. My own father wouldn't look at me. I know, David. I know. How could this happen? How could they do this and no one stopped them?" Maggie held him tighter, feeling his pain as if it were her own. Daniel had loved this boy like a son, had mentored him, encouraged him, believed in him when others doubted. And then Daniel had died and David had tried to carry on his legacy and the monsters had crushed him for it. "They stopped now," she said quietly, "because you didn't give up, because you kept telling the truth, even when no one believed you. You planted a seed, David. I just watered it." He pulled back, wiping his eyes. "What happens to me now, my discharge, the conviction, is being overturned as we speak. General Morrison has already submitted the paperwork. Full exoneration, back pay, restoration of rank." She squeezed his hands. "You're going to be Lieutenant David Hartwell again, if you want to be." Something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been hope. "I never stopped wanting to serve," he said. "I just stopped believing anyone would let me." "Well, start believing again. Your uncle would be proud of you. I'm proud of you." David's jaw tightened. "I want to testify. At the trials. I want to look Drake in the eye and tell the world what he did to me." "Then you'll testify." "And Whitmore. I want him to know that the man he tried to destroy is the reason his empire fell." Maggie smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "He'll know. I'll make sure of it." The congressional hearings began 2 weeks later. The Armed Services Committee had been reconstituted after Whitmore's arrest, and the new chairman, Senator Patricia Holmes, had made it clear that she wanted full transparency. No cover-ups, no deals, no protection for the guilty. Maggie was the first witness called. She walked into the hearing room wearing her Marine dress uniform for the first time in 8 years. Medals gleamed on her chest. The trident patch that had belonged to Daniel, now officially recognized as hers to wear, was pinned over her heart. The room fell silent as she took her seat. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Hartwell," Senator Holmes began, "please state for the record your involvement in the events at Fort Mason, Texas." Maggie looked directly into the cameras. "My involvement began with a broken promise. After my husband died in Afghanistan, I promised him I wouldn't disappear. I broke that promise for 8 years. I let grief consume me. I let fear control me. I became exactly what my enemies wanted me to be: invisible, powerless, forgotten." She paused, letting the words settle. "Then I received a message from Colonel Sarah Vance informing me that young women were disappearing from Fort Mason. American soldiers, daughters, sisters, mothers, being trafficked by the very institution that was supposed to protect them. And what did you do?" "What any Marine would do. I went in, I gathered evidence, and when I found those women being prepared for sale to foreign buyers, I stopped it. By force. By whatever means necessary." Maggie's voice hardened. "Let me be clear, Senator. I killed 7 men that night. I would have killed more if necessary. Because the lives of those women, the lives of Jessica Moreno, Amanda Chen, Rebecca Santos, were worth more than the lives of the men who had enslaved them." A murmur ran through the chamber. "Some people will call me a vigilante," Maggie continued. "Some will say I should have waited for proper authorities. Let me tell you what would have happened if I had waited. Those women would have been loaded onto a plane and shipped to buyers overseas. They would have spent the rest of their lives as property. And Senator David Whitmore would still be sitting in this very building pretending to care about military accountability while profiting from human suffering." The room was absolutely silent. "I'm not asking for approval," Maggie said. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to remember something. Sometimes the system fails. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the predators. And when that happens, someone has to stand up. Someone has to fight. Someone has to say enough. She looked directly at Senator Holmes. That's what I did. That's why I'm here. And I would do it again without hesitation. The hearing lasted 4 days. Witness after witness took the stand. Jessica Moreno described her captivity in heartbreaking detail, reducing half the chamber to tears. Amanda Chen explained how Drake had blackmailed her with fabricated evidence. Rebecca Santos told of watching other women be taken away, knowing she would be next. Rosa Delgado testified about her daughter Lisa, the soldier who had killed herself, rather than continue suffering under Drake's control. For 6 years I cleaned floors and washed dishes and watched young soldiers destroyed, Rosa said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. And nobody asked me what I saw. Nobody thought a Mexican grandmother in an apron could matter. She pointed at the empty chair where Whitmore would have sat. He walked past me 1,000 times, never once looked at my face. We were furniture to him, invisible. But we saw everything. We remembered everything. And when Sergeant Hartwell came, we finally had someone who would listen. The most devastating testimony came from Tessa Whitmore. The young woman walked into the hearing room with her head held high despite the whispers that followed her everywhere. The senator's daughter, the traitor, the girl who had turned on her own father. I loved him, she said quietly. He was my father. I wanted to believe he was a good man, even when I saw things that didn't make sense, even when I heard things that made me sick. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. When did you realize the truth? When I was stationed at Fort Mason. When I saw what Drake was doing to female recruits. When I tried to report it and was threatened. Tessa's voice cracked. My father called me the night I tried to report. He said if I ever talked to anyone again, I would disappear like the others. His exact words. The chamber gasped. He said I was an investment, that he had spent years preparing me to take over the family business. He didn't mean politics. He meant trafficking. He wanted me to be his successor. What did you do? I pretended to comply. I stopped asking questions. I tried to survive until I could find a way out. Tears streamed down her face. And then Sergeant Hartwell came, and suddenly there was hope. Suddenly someone was fighting back. She looked directly at Maggie. You saved more than those 3 women. You saved me. You showed me that courage was possible, that standing up for what's right was worth more than survival. She turned back to the committee. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm testifying against my own father. Because some things are more important than blood. The trials began in federal court 3 months later. Drake was tried first. The evidence was overwhelming: videos, financial records, testimony from dozens of victims. His defense team tried to portray him as a rogue operator acting without higher authorization. It didn't work. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Trafficking, conspiracy, assault, kidnapping, corruption. 57 counts in total. The judge sentenced him to 6 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. As Drake was led from the courtroom, he passed Maggie's row. He stopped guards tugging at his arms and stared at her with pure hatred. You think this is over? He hissed. There are others. People I never met. People Whitmore never met. This network is bigger than you know. You haven't won anything. Maybe not, Maggie replied calmly. But I've made a start. And unlike you, I won't stop. They dragged him away, still screaming threats. But Maggie's blood had gone cold. Others. People Drake never met. How deep did this really go? Whitmore's trial was even more dramatic. The former senator, once one of the most powerful men in Washington, sat at the defense table looking diminished, broken. His expensive lawyers tried every trick in the book. Entrapment, coercion, mental instability. Nothing worked. The videos were played in open court. The jury watched as Whitmore examined women like livestock, discussed prices with buyers, laughed about how easy it was to corrupt the system he had sworn to serve. When Maggie took the stand as a witness, she found herself face to face with the man who had orchestrated so much suffering. Sergeant Hartwell, his lawyer began, isn't it true that you broke into Colonel Drake's office illegally? Yes. And that you assaulted military personnel during your so-called investigation? Yes. And that you killed 7 men without authorization from any legitimate authority. Yes. The lawyer smiled, sensing an opportunity. So you admit to being a vigilante. A criminal. Someone who took the law into her own hands. Maggie looked directly at Whitmore as she answered. I admit to being someone who acted when the law failed, when the people responsible for enforcement were themselves corrupt, when young women were being sold to the highest bidder while senators and colonels counted their money. She leaned forward. Your client called those women merchandise. He discussed their prices like they were cars or furniture. He built a network that destroyed hundreds of lives over 15 years. And he did it while sitting on the Armed Services Committee pretending to protect the military he was exploiting. Her voice rose. So yes, I broke the law. I broke it to save lives. I broke it because the alternative was watching those women disappear forever. And I would break it again 100 times, 1,000 times if it meant stopping men like David Whitmore from treating human beings as property. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order, but everyone had heard. Everyone had seen the fire in Maggie's eyes. The jury was out for 2 days, guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Whitmore collapsed in his chair. His lawyers caught him before he hit the floor. He was sobbing, begging, offering to cooperate, to name names, to give up everything he knew. Too late. The judge sentenced him to life without parole plus 240 years. A symbolic number 1 year for each victim they had identified across the entire network. As marshals led him away, Whitmore looked back at Maggie one final time. You don't understand what you've done, he said. You've only scratched the surface. There are people above me. People who will never be touched. People who... Then I'll find them too, Maggie interrupted. However long it takes, however deep it goes, I'll find them all. The door closed behind him. It was over. At least this chapter. The cleanup took months. Investigations spread across the military, rooting out corruption, exposing collaborators, dismantling the infrastructure that had enabled the trafficking network to flourish. 43 officers were court-martialed. 12 government officials were indicted. 6 overseas buyers were extradited to face American justice. And at the center of it all, 3 women rebuilt their lives. Jessica Moreno returned to service, completing her training and graduating top of her class. She was assigned to the Army Criminal Investigation Division, hunting the predators who had once hunted her. Amanda Chen left the military and went to law school. She wanted to prosecute trafficking cases, wanted to give voice to victims who couldn't speak for themselves. Rebecca Santos became a counselor working with survivors of military sexual trauma. She had spent months in captivity. Now she spent her days helping others heal from similar horrors. David Hartwell was reinstated with full honors. He served 3 more years before retiring with the rank of major. At his retirement ceremony, he credited his Uncle Daniel and his Aunt Maggie with showing him what honor really meant. Corporal Vickers served his 6-month sentence without complaint. When he was released, he found a job working with veteran support services. He never wore the uniform again, but he never stopped trying to make amends. Brennan received 12 years in federal prison. His shoulder healed, but the bullet Maggie had put through it left permanent nerve damage. He would never hold a weapon again. And Rosa Delgado, the kitchen worker who had seen everything, finally received recognition for her years of silent witness. The Army awarded her a civilian medal for her role in exposing the corruption. She displayed it in her living room next to a photograph of her daughter Lisa. Now she can rest, Rosa said when they gave it to her. Now she knows she wasn't forgotten. 6 months after the trials ended, Maggie returned to Fort Mason. The base had changed. New leadership, new protocols, new commitment to protecting all who served. A memorial had been erected near the parade ground, a wall of names honoring every victim of the trafficking network. Maggie walked alone to Daniel's marker, the one she had found that first day. His name still gleamed in bronze, untarnished by time. She knelt in the dirt, feeling the Texas wind on her face. It's done, Danny. The promise is kept. The people who hurt those women are in prison. The network is destroyed. The survivors are healing. She pressed her palm against the cold metal. I almost gave up. So many times. I almost let the grief swallow me. But you were right. The world still needed me. And I finally figured out why. A tear rolled down her cheek. It wasn't about being a hero. It wasn't about redemption or revenge. It was about remembering that even when we feel invisible, even when we feel powerless, even when we feel too old and too broken to matter, we can still make a difference. We can still stand up. We can still fight. She stood slowly, her joints protesting. I'm going to keep fighting Danny for as long as I can, because that's what you would have done, because that's what love means. She kissed her fingers and pressed them to his name. Save a spot for me wherever you are. I'll find you eventually, but not yet. Not while there's still work to do. She turned and walked away, leaving the memorial behind. But she didn't walk alone. Rosa was waiting by the entrance. So was Colonel Vance, and General Morrison, and Jessica and Amanda and Rebecca, and behind them dozens of others, soldiers and civilians, survivors and supporters, people whose lives had been touched by what Maggie had done. You weren't planning to leave without saying goodbye, were you? Vance asked. I hate goodbyes. Too bad. Rosa stepped forward and embraced her. We're not letting you disappear again, not after everything. Maggie looked at the faces surrounding her. So many people she hadn't known 6 months ago. So many lives that had intersected with hers in ways she never expected. What if I want to disappear? Jessica laughed. Then you'll have to teach us all how to be invisible, because we're not going anywhere. Maggie felt something shift in her chest, something that had been frozen for 8 years, finally beginning to thaw. All right, she said quietly. No more disappearing. No more hiding. She looked up at the Texas sky, blue and endless and full of possibility. But I'm going to need a lot more coffee. Rosa grinned. That, mija, I can provide. They walked together toward the parking lot, the old sniper and her unlikely family. Behind them, the memorial stood, watch over the base, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been saved. And somewhere above, maybe watching, maybe not, Daniel Hartwell's spirit smiled. His ghost mother had finally come home. 1 year passed. The world moved on as worlds always do. News cycles churned through new scandals, new outrages, new heroes and villains. The Fort Mason case faded from headlines, replaced by fresher controversies. But Maggie didn't forget. Neither did the people whose lives had been forever changed. The Hartwell Ranch had been transformed. Where Drake had once run his trafficking operation, a new facility now stood, a retreat center for survivors of military trauma. The old barn had been demolished, the bunker filled with concrete, the land cleansed of its dark history. Rosa ran the kitchen. Of course she did. She had insisted. Someone has to feed these broken souls, she told Maggie when the center opened. And nobody cooks like a Mexican grandmother. Maggie had resisted at first. The idea of staying in one place, of being known, of being visible, it went against everything she had become in those 8 years of hiding. But the survivors needed her. Not just the women from Fort Mason. Others came too. Soldiers who had been abused by their commands. Veterans who had been silenced when they tried to report misconduct. Men and women whose careers had been destroyed because they dared to tell the truth. They came to the Hartwell Center seeking healing. And they found something unexpected. They found Maggie. Tell me about him, she said to a young sergeant who had arrived that morning. His name was Marcus Williams, 28 years old, discharged after accusing his commanding officer of assault. He hurt me, Marcus whispered. His hands trembled around his coffee cup. And when I reported it, they said I was lying. Said I wanted attention. They took my career, my honor, everything I worked for. I believe you. 3 words, so simple, so powerful. Marcus looked up, tears streaming down his face. Why everyone else was wrong. Maggie sat across from him, her eyes steady. I've spent my whole career around soldiers. I know what truth looks like, and I know what it costs to tell it. What do I do now? How do I live with this? You heal, you find people who understand. And when you're ready, if you're ready, you fight back. Fight how they've already won. Maggie smiled. It was a dangerous smile. They think they've won. But I've learned something about power, Marcus. The people at the top, they believe their positions protect them. They think money and rank and connections make them untouchable. She leaned forward. They're wrong. Because truth is patient. Truth waits. And when the right person comes along, someone who won't be silenced, someone who won't give up truth, tears down everything the powerful have built. Marcus stared at her. You really believe that? I'm living proof of it. A year ago, I was a homeless woman washing dishes. Nobody noticed me. Nobody cared. And then I brought down a senator, a colonel, and an international trafficking network. She squeezed his hand. They underestimated me because I was old, because I was invisible, because I didn't look like a threat. That was their mistake. And if they've underestimated you, that's their mistake too. Something shifted in Marcus's eyes. The despair didn't disappear, but something else joined it. Something that looked like hope. Will you help me? That's what I'm here for. The phone rang at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Maggie was awake instantly, years of training overriding the body's need for sleep. She grabbed the phone before the second ring. Hartwell. Maggie. Colonel Vance's voice was tight, controlled. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Drake escaped. The words hit like bullets. Maggie sat up, her heart pounding. That's impossible. He's in maximum security, life without parole. Someone got to the guards. Someone with money and connections. He walked out of federal prison 6 hours ago. Vance's voice cracked. We don't know where he is. Maggie was already moving, pulling on clothes, reaching for the bag she always kept packed. Jessica, Amanda, Rebecca. Are they? Under protection. I sent teams the moment I found out. But Maggie... Vance hesitated. He left a message, written in blood on his cell wall. What did it say? Ghost Mother is next. Maggie's hands stilled on her bag. For a moment, just a moment, she felt fear. The cold, primal terror of being hunted. Then the fear transformed into something else. Anger. Let him come. Maggie. I said let him come. I killed 7 of his men and put him in prison. If he wants to finish this, I'll be happy to oblige. This isn't a joke. He has resources, people. He's been planning this for months. So have I. Maggie grabbed her rifle case from under the bed. I never stopped preparing, Sarah. I knew this day might come. Drake was too arrogant, too vengeful to accept his defeat. Part of me hoped he would try something. Why? Because as long as he's alive, those women will never be safe. He'll come for them eventually. Come for everyone who testified against him. The only way this ends is with one of us dead. A long pause on the line. What do you need? Location data, everything you have on his escape, known associates who might be helping him. I'll send it. And Sarah, don't tell the others. Don't warn them. If Drake has people watching, any unusual security movement will tip him off. You want him to think you're unprotected. I want him to think he has the advantage. Let him believe he's the hunter. Let him walk right into my crosshairs. Maggie ended the call and stood in the darkness, her mind racing through scenarios. Drake would come for her first. It was personal now. She had humiliated him, destroyed him, taken everything he had built. A man like that couldn't rest until he had his revenge. She was counting on it. The next 3 days were a masterclass in preparation. Maggie reached out to her network, the invisible army of people she had helped over the past year. Kitchen workers, cleaning staff, maintenance crews. The people who saw everything because nobody saw them. Within 48 hours, she had eyes across 5 states. Gas station attendants reported suspicious vehicles. Motel clerks noted unusual guests. A truck stop waitress outside Dallas spotted a man matching Drake's description, buying coffee at 2 a.m. The net was closing. Rosa knew something was wrong, but she didn't ask questions. She simply appeared at Maggie's door with food, coffee, and a shotgun she had hidden in the flour storage. I was married to a Marine for 30 years, Rosa said when Maggie raised an eyebrow. You think I don't know how to shoot? Rosa. Don't Rosa me. You saved my daughter's memory. You gave those women their lives back. If someone is coming for you, they're coming through me first. This isn't your fight. Everything you do is my fight. That's what family means. Maggie stared at her, this Mexican grandmother with a shotgun and absolutely no fear in her eyes, and felt something break open in her chest. "All right," she said quietly. "But you stay behind me. And if I tell you to run, you run. I'll run when you run, mija." They both knew neither of them would run. The attack came on the fourth night. Maggie had sent the residents away, a facility maintenance issue that required evacuation. Only she and Rosa remained waiting in the darkness. At 0200 hours, her phone buzzed. A text from one of her watchers. 3 vehicles approaching from the east. Estimated 12 hostiles. Maggie smiled grimly. 12 men to kill 1 old woman. Drake wasn't taking chances, but neither was she. "They're coming," she told Rosa. "Remember the plan." "I remember." They separated Rosa to the fortified safe room Maggie had built. Maggie to the roof of the main building. From her position, she could see the vehicles approaching. No headlights. Running dark. Professional. They stopped a quarter-mile out, and figures emerged. Tactical gear. Night vision. Automatic weapons. "Spread out," a voice commanded. Drake's voice, crackling through a radio she had intercepted. "She's here somewhere. Find her." The men moved in a coordinated sweep, covering angles, checking sightlines. These weren't amateurs. Drake had hired professionals. Too bad for them. Maggie's first shot took out their communications specialist. Just like at the ranch. Cut the head and the body flailed. The men scattered, seeking cover. "Sniper!" someone shouted. "She's on the roof." Wrong. Maggie had already moved, descending through a hatch she had installed months ago. By the time they started firing at the roof, she was on the ground floor, circling behind them. Her second shot dropped a man near the barn. Her third caught another trying to breach the main entrance. "Where the hell is she?" Drake screamed. "Everywhere," Maggie whispered into the radio. "And nowhere." She watched through her scope as Drake's face twisted with rage and fear. He was sweating despite the cool night air. His hands shook as he gripped his weapon. "You think you can stop me?" he shouted into the darkness. "I have 12 men. You're 1 old woman. I had 18 men at the ranch. Look how that turned out." Another shot. Another body dropped. Drake's remaining men were panicking now. They fired wildly, bullets tearing through empty buildings, hitting nothing but air and wood and their own shadows. Maggie moved like a ghost, never staying in one place, never giving them a target to fix on. 26 years of training. 100 operations in countries most people couldn't find on a map. This was what she had been built for. Within 10 minutes, only Drake and 2 others remained. "Surrender!" Maggie called out. "Throw down your weapons and lie face down on the ground. You have 30 seconds. "Never!" Drake screamed. He grabbed one of his remaining men. "Find her, kill her." The man hesitated, looking at the bodies of his colleagues scattered across the compound. "Sir, maybe we should—" Drake shot him in the head. "You want something done right?" he muttered, stepping over the body. His last remaining soldier stared at him in horror, then threw down his weapon and ran. Maggie let him go. This was between her and Drake now. "Just us," she called out, the way it should have been from the start. "Show yourself, old woman, face me." "Why? So you can shoot me? I don't think so." "Coward. You hide in the shadows like the ghost they call you." Maggie considered. Drake was unstable, desperate, dangerous. A cornered animal. The smart play was to put a bullet in him from a distance and end it cleanly. But that wasn't enough. She needed him to understand. Needed him to see exactly who had destroyed him and why. She stepped out of the shadows. Drake spun his weapon, rising, but Maggie was faster. Her shot took the gun from his hand, the bullet shattering metal and bone. He screamed, clutching his ruined hand. "You bitch! You—" "Quiet!" Maggie approached slowly, her rifle trained on his chest. "You don't get to talk anymore. You've done enough talking for a lifetime." Drake fell to his knees, his face contorted with pain and hatred. "You think you've won? There are others. People I never met. People who will come for you, for everyone you care about." "I know. You've mentioned that before, and I'll deal with them the same way I dealt with you." She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the fear finally breaking through his rage. Do you remember what you said to me in your office the day you figured out who I was? He said nothing. You said I was a liability. That liabilities get eliminated. She crouched down, bringing her face level with his. You were right. Liabilities do get eliminated. You just made a mistake about which one of us was the liability. They'll hunt you forever. You'll never be safe. I've never been safe. I've been hunted by worse than you in worse places than this. And I'm still here. She pressed the rifle barrel against his forehead. While everyone who hunted me is dead. Drake's eyes widened. For the first time, true terror flooded his face. Please, he whispered. Please, I can give you names. Information. I know things. I don't need your names. I don't need your information. Everything you knew we already have. Then what do you want? Maggie leaned closer. I want you to know how it feels. To be powerless. To be at someone else's mercy. To beg and know that begging won't help. Tears streamed down Drake's face. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you're about to die. But you're not sorry for those women. Not sorry for the lives you destroyed. Not sorry for any of it. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Maggie. She froze. Rosa stood in the doorway of the main building, shotgun in hand. He's not worth it, Mija. Not worth your soul. He'll escape again. He'll come back. He'll hurt more people. Then let the system handle him. You've done enough killing. The system failed before. And you fixed it. You changed it. Let it prove itself now. Maggie stared at Drake's terrified face. Every instinct screamed at her to pull the trigger, to end this threat permanently, to make sure he never hurt anyone again. But Rosa was right. She had already killed enough. She stood slowly, the rifle lowering. You're going back to prison, she told Drake. Maximum security, solitary confinement, no possibility of escape this time. They'll find a way. No, they won't. Because I'm going to personally oversee your security arrangements. And if anyone tries to help you escape again, I'll know about it before they even make the attempt. She stepped back. You wanted to be powerful, Drake. You wanted to be feared. Congratulations. You got your wish. But the thing about power is that it can always be taken away. And fear, she smiled coldly, fear works both ways. Sirens wailed in the distance. Vance's backup finally arriving. Drake slumped to the ground, broken and bleeding, his empire of cruelty reduced to dust. And Maggie walked away, leaving him to face the justice he had spent so long evading. The aftermath was complicated. 12 more arrests stemmed from Drake's escape attempt. Guards who had been bribed, lawyers who had facilitated, a web of corruption that reached into places no one had expected. But this time the system worked. Every conspirator was identified, prosecuted, and imprisoned. The holes in the security apparatus were found and sealed. The networks of protection that men like Drake relied on were systematically dismantled. It took months. It was exhausting, frustrating work, but it got done. On the first anniversary of the Fort Mason raid, a ceremony was held at the Hartwell Center. Survivors gathered from across the country, the women who had been rescued, the soldiers who had been helped, the families who had found closure. Jessica Moreno spoke first. A year ago, I was merchandise, a thing to be bought and sold. I had given up hope that anyone would come for me. She looked at Maggie. Then a smelly old woman started working in the commissary kitchen. She left extra food on my tray. She looked at me like I was human. And when the time came, she walked through fire to bring me home. Amanda Chen stepped forward. I spent 8 months in that bunker. 8 months of darkness and fear. I prayed for death. I prayed for rescue. I prayed for anything that would end the nightmare. Her voice strengthened. Maggie Hartwell answered my prayers. Not with words, but with action. Not with promises, but with bullets. Rebecca Santos was last. They told us we were worthless, that no one cared about us, that we would be forgotten. She smiled through her tears. They were wrong. We are not forgotten. We are not worthless. We are survivors. and we have a champion who will never stop fighting for us." Then it was Maggie's turn. She stood at the podium looking out at the faces before her. Young and old, men and women, survivors and supporters. A family she had never expected to find. "I spent 8 years running from who I was," she began. "After my husband died, I convinced myself that my fighting days were over, that I had nothing left to give, that the world had moved on without me." She paused. "I was wrong. The world doesn't need young heroes. It needs experienced ones. It needs people who have lived long enough to know what really matters, who have lost enough to understand the value of what remains, who have been broken enough to know that broken things can still be useful." Her voice grew stronger. "They called me smelly old woman. They laughed at my gray hair and my worn clothes and my apparent helplessness. They saw exactly what they expected to see, a nobody, a nothing, a waste of space." She smiled. "They forgot that invisible people see everything, that underestimated people surprise everyone, that the old woman washing dishes might be the deadliest sniper in Marine Corps history." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Here's what I want you to remember. You are never too old to make a difference, never too broken to stand up, never too invisible to be seen by the people who matter." She looked at Rosa, at Jessica, at David, at Sarah, at all the people who had become her family. "The men who tried to destroy us believed that power comes from money-rank connections. They were wrong. Real power comes from conviction, from courage, from the willingness to stand up when everyone else is sitting down." Her voice dropped. "My husband asked me to protect those who cannot protect themselves. I kept that promise, not because I'm special or heroic or better than anyone else, but because it was the right thing to do, because someone had to, because the alternative was watching evil win." She straightened. "So here's my challenge to you. Find your fight. Find the injustice that makes your blood boil. Find the cause that's worth everything you have, and then fight for it, with everything you are, for as long as you can, because that's what life is for." She paused one final time. "They called me the Ghost Mother. They meant it as a compliment, a recognition of my ability to be invisible, to strike without warning, to disappear into shadows. But I've realized that ghosthood isn't about hiding. It's about transcendence. It's about becoming more than the limitations others place on you. More than the body that ages. More than the grief that breaks. More than the fear that paralyzes." She looked directly into the faces of those who had come to honor her. "We are all ghosts, in a sense. We carry with us everyone we've lost, everyone we've loved, everyone who believed in us when we didn't believe in ourselves. Daniel is with me still. Lisa is with Rosa. Every soldier who died serving their country is with us today." Her voice rose. "And together, the living and the dead, the seen and the unseen, we are unstoppable." The applause was thunderous. Later that night, after the crowds had gone and the facility had grown quiet, Maggie walked to the small cemetery at the edge of the property. A new headstone had been placed there next to the markers for Rosa's daughter Lisa and others who had fallen in the long fight against injustice. The inscription read, "Master Daniel R. Hartwell, 1962-2016, beloved husband, faithful warrior. His love made her strong, his sacrifice made her unstoppable." Maggie knelt in the grass, her joints protesting less than they used to. A year of purpose had been better for her body than 8 years of despair. "Hey, Danny." The wind stirred, carrying the scent of Texas sage. "I kept my promise. Finally. Completely. The people who hurt those women are in prison. The system that protected them is being rebuilt. And I'm not hiding anymore." She pressed her hand to the earth. "I thought I'd join you soon. Part of me hoped I would. But it turns out there's still work to do. Still people who need protecting. Still fights worth having." A tear rolled down her cheek. "So you'll have to wait a little longer. But I'm coming. Someday. And when I do, I'll have some stories to tell you." She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees. "I love you, Danny. Always did. Always will." She turned and walked back toward the lights of the Hartwell Center where Rosa was waiting with coffee and the next day's planning. Behind her in the quiet Texas night, a whisper might have been heard, or it might have been the wind or imagination or memory. That's my girl, my Maggie, my ghost mother. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. He was with her. He had always been with her, and he always would be. 3 years later. Maggie Hartwell stood at a podium in Washington, D.C. The president had just placed the Presidential Medal of Freedom around her neck, the highest civilian honor, recognizing her role in dismantling the largest human trafficking network in American military history. But more importantly, she was about to give one final speech. "I'm 60 years old now," she began. "Gray hair, bad knees. I can't run like I used to. Can't shoot like I used to. Can't do a lot of things like I used to." She smiled. "But I can still fight, still stand up, still refuse to accept injustice when I see it." She looked out at the audience survivors. Soldiers, senators, citizens. They called me a smelly old woman once, laughed at me, dismissed me, forgot I existed the moment they looked away. Her voice hardened. That was their mistake, because while they were laughing, I was watching. While they were dismissing me, I was planning. And while they were forgetting I existed, I was preparing to destroy everything they had built. She leaned into the microphone. "So here's my message to everyone who's ever been overlooked. Every woman who's been underestimated. Every older person who's been dismissed. Every invisible soul who's been told they don't matter." Her voice rose. "You matter. Your experience matters. Your wisdom matters. Your willingness to fight matters." She paused. "And the people who underestimate you, the ones who laugh and dismiss and forget." Her eyes blazed. "They have no idea what's coming for them." The applause thundered through the chamber, and Margaret Hartwell, sniper survivor savior, smiled the smile of a woman who had found her purpose. Because the story wasn't over, it never would be. As long as there were powerful people exploiting the weak, there would be invisible people rising to stop them. As long as there was injustice, there would be justice. As long as there were ghosts, there would be haunting. And as long as there was one old woman with a rifle and a promise to keep evil would never sleep soundly. That was her legacy. That was her truth. And it would echo forever. Because true courage is not measured by how hard you strike, but by knowing when and why you must stand. It is not about power, but principle. And sometimes the bravest act is not drawing a weapon. It is standing up when no one else will, speaking out when everyone else is silent, and fighting on when everyone else has given up. Margaret Hartwell understood this. She had lived it. She had proved it, and she would continue proving it every single day until her last breath. Because that's what ghost mothers do. They never stop protecting their own.